Hello and welcome to another segment of Heal Thyself, Benefits of Holistic Living. I'm Mia Saenz, your host, and with me in this segment is Kellie Valenti. Kellie is a holistic wellness coach. She specializes in a lot of wonderful things that go into our body. She helps people discover the fountain of youth from, well, outside to make our inside young and beautiful. So welcome, Kellie.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, Mia.
It's awesome to have you. I'm really glad that you came to do this show because everybody wants to know what it's like to live younger and to be younger. So we're going to have a lot of fun questions here. Can you start out with your journey first on how you got to where you are now, what it took for you to understand and discover the benefits of eating well? Because these stories generally waken people up to go, oh, cool. I resonate with that.
Absolutely. Mine actually started when I was really young, and it started from a fitness perspective, really. My mom had all my brothers and myself at the time working out in front of the television. You know, Jack LaLanne at that time was a big guru, and so, I'm kind of dating myself by saying that, but but that's how it started. And so from there, we always had a foundational element with our family to sit down, have meals together. And my mom was an awesome cook. And so I grew up with that foundation, and she even fermented, and did sauerkraut at the time. Was probably not, a big thing, but it was for us. And so we had that foundation. I can go back to 30 years ago. I was experimenting and making sourdough and handing it out to anybody and everybody that would take it, because once you start making it, you have a lot of it. So, and then it just kind of kept progressing. I was very much into health and aware that, taking a good multivitamin just as a little thing as a teenager to me was a big thing. And most people go, that's not normal. Most people don't do things like that, but that's just how I guess rolled at the time. Just very much always my perspective on health being, it is a foundation. I don't know that I ever really thought about all of the specifics about it. It was just something I did and something I practiced. Several years ago, I really got more involved in the fermentation process, and it was like a big science project. I have things all over my house, today. So, and that's just, and it was fun for me, and it was fun to experiment with the foods. And then when you start learning about the benefits of these foods, it just skyrocketed from there. And then I got asked to start sharing the things that I was doing and preparing for my family for others. So that's really kind of how that all took place. So it's cool. It's a cool journey to be on. And also, I guess one of the things I want to point out is it doesn't happen overnight. It is a journey. And so for most people that come into it and go, oh my gosh, feel like there's so much to learn or so many things I don't know, and they get overwhelmed. It's just, back up and go, okay, this was a process, and this was a lot of years of learning for me too.
That's awesome. It's listening to you. It's funny because I remember Jack LaLanne and my mom working out to a bunch of other things. I was really athletic, and I actually rebelled and went the other way. Instead of keeping the foundation, I tried to destroy my body. It was just a self-hurt thing. And literally because I didn't know how to keep men away from me. So I thought, well, if I get fat and really super huge, they'll leave me alone. And I've discovered other women have gone through that process too. Theirs were subconsciously, mine was conscious. And then I shifted around and changed. And I'm so excited about all these fermentation things, and I'm going to get a machine, and I'm going to start making my own sauerkraut and pickles, and because I want which you're going to talk about, but I want my tummy to be in perfect alignment with what it's supposed to be. So it's very cool. I want to ask you and start talking about healing illness with food, that we can actually heal diseases and illness and change not just our physical form, but our internal form too.
Absolutely. And that's the really cool thing about food. And I think a lot of people don't really realize the benefits to food. We hear all the time about all the bad stuff and all the, things that foods do for us. But there's a flip side to that, to say, okay, if you really understand what healing foods are and the benefits behind them and what they can actually do. It's amazing. Bone broth is probably my number one thing. I mean, I have several of them, but bone broth is a big one because it cuts inflammation, and inflammation leads to so many of the chronic illnesses and diseases that we see today. And most people don't realize that inflammation is a good thing. I mean, it's in our bodies for a reason. So think about when you get a cut, the body immediately goes to sending out its little warriors basically to take care of healing it. But when we get so much inflammation because of our lifestyle choices and the foods that we put in from a perspective of fast food, convenience, all of those types of foods, it creates a lot more inflammation. And so our bodies go into overdrive trying to take care of it. So bone broth is a huge one that's super simple to get in the form of just drinking it like I do my morning coffee, to making it into soups. We heard of the chicken soup, or we knew of the chicken soup when we were younger, and that's what moms or grandmas always gave to us to help us feel better. Well, there was a reason for that. They had inside information, so to speak.
Well, that's so cool. Can you just briefly give us a bone broth recipe? Because I've done the chicken bones, just to make soup broth or to use it for anything, for my enchilada casseroles, whatever I was making. I always had that for my animals. I always had chicken around. But in my first marriage, my husband was not a red meat eater. And so it's like I lost years of childhood understanding about beef. So can you give us just a quick glimpse into what making bone broth, the process of it?
Absolutely. There are several kinds. You can do fish, you can do beef, you can do chicken, which is probably the most popular. You can use lamb. I mean, there are all kinds of sources too. Actually, I just had somebody ask me about using rabbit or elk because they were hunting. And I said, I'm guessing, obviously, you can do what you have access to. Let's, waste not, want not. So a basic one, I would say, because the two main ones that I make all the time are beef and chicken. Both of them basically are the same. You just need some good, let's talk chicken at this point in time, so it's easier so I don't cross-reference. You start out with, I usually use a whole chicken when I'm starting, and I will put it in a crock pot. Some people don't, they like to roast their chicken. I do that sometimes too, so let's start out with a whole chicken. We'll put it in the crock pot. I'm going to also take, 2 or 3 nice carrots. Cut those up. You don't have to cut them up fine because you're not going to eat them necessarily. You're going to take 2 or 3 stalks of celery. You're also going to have, I probably do a whole onion. I leave the skins on because you're going to get minerals from the skins. Just roughly chop all of that up, put it in your crock pot with the chicken. Cover that with water. So depending upon if it's a regular size crock pot, I would say about a 4-quart, you're going to cover that with water. Add about a 1/4 cup of raw apple cider vinegar. What that's going to do is help pull the minerals from the bones. So you're now getting more minerals in there, which is the key. I then take, a good pinch or a couple of pinches of an unrefined sea salt, like a Himalayan or a Celtic salt, something good that also is full of minerals. And then I cover it up and I turn it on low and I let it go for at least 24 hours. Super simple from that perspective. About the last 10 to 15 minutes of that roast time, you can take some fresh parsley and add in, because now that adds another element of minerals, but they don't do so well because you lose that vitamin content if you let them cook long term. Something else I didn't mention too is a lot of times if I have a big fresh clove of or a head of garlic, I will throw that in there too. Wow. Because garlic adds another level of nutrients to the pot. So once that's all done, super simple, is that you just then drain everything out and put it into a stock pot underneath. So now you end up with your broth. And then I usually freeze that into I use glass ball jars. Wide mouth is a key. Don't use a regular mouth because they don't freeze so well. They don't play nice in the freezer. They tend to break. Okay. Yeah. And then you want to leave a little headspace. You got to leave at least a couple inches in there so that it will allow for expansion. But you end up with about 4 quarts of broth from that. So save the chicken, pull that meat off the chicken, use the meat in, making casseroles or sandwiches or anything like that. And now you've got a set of bones. Don't discard the bones, because you could cook those bones again and you can make some more broth, right? So usually at that point I'll take, if I don't have 2 sets of bones, just because I want to do that another batch, I'll throw those in the freezer and save them until I have another set. And then the next time I'm going to throw like 2 sets of just bones, no meat, into the pot, do the same process. Add your vegetables, cook it for 24 hours, and you'll end up with just as beautiful broth. Yeah, it's great.
Love it. Yeah. I love it so much, and now I'm inspired again to do this again. Thank you. That was awesome, because we get out of the habit of things, and it's really not that hard. Like you said, if you put it in the dang crock pot and just leave it there. So that's awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I'm a happy girl, as you can see. And, it also spurs with not just me, but other people watching this. It'll spur memories of, I did that, or I remember Mom used to do that, or Grandma. And it's really important for that.
Yeah. Yes.
So what are some foods that are good in the healing process?
Well, bone broth is obviously a really good one. Fermented vegetables are excellent. From a perspective of they add probiotics, they add enzymes, especially as we age, our enzymes tend to drop, and that's the part that you need to help digest the food. So those are excellent. Getting good healthy saturated fats. Healthy saturated fats come from many sources, but I prefer them to come from good dairy. And I mean from not commercial dairy, not pasteurized dairy. So I'm talking raw milk or and eggs from pastured chickens, because the yolks provide a good saturated fat. So saturated fats from meats. Let's see. I really like coconut oil too. I know that's not a meat source, but I really like coconut oil. It also does a lot of really beneficial things. Let's see. I mean, you can get good sources from nuts and seeds and beans. Those are all good sources, again, properly prepared, and we can talk a little bit more about what that means, but typically it would mean you need to soak and sprout those things to make them more digestible and also more nutritious. So those are just kind of some general advice.
I've heard about people soaking their nuts. So obviously you're not buying roasted salted nuts when you're talking about good nutrition with nuts.
No. Yeah. No. I mean, yes, you're going to go buy them, but yes, you're going to then soak them, and then you're going to dry them out.
Even the roasted ones with salt on them in the grocery store, or do you buy?
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I would buy like a good bulk, like almonds and walnuts and pecans, things like that. And those are the typically ones that I do all the time to then just have on hand. Because once you soak them, if you do a bunch at one time, you're soaking them and you need something acidic. So you're using, like, again, the raw apple cider vinegar or some whey or some kefir or some buttermilk, something acidic, to soak them in for a little bit, usually overnight. Drain that all off, put them on a baking sheet, or if you have a nice big dehydrator, put them in there low, several hours until they're dry. And then I keep them in like glass jars, and then I have them. So they're great for snacking on, they're great for baking with, they're great for just, using. So yes. And because you've, nuts and seeds and beans and grains have what they call phytic acid. And it's kind of like a protective coating. If you think about it's being protected and it's being protected from also your stomach. It has a hard time digesting. So that's the reason why you do that. It also makes it much more more easily, readily available to the minerals and the vitamins that are actually inside that nut, seed, bean, or grain. If that makes sense.
That's great. Wow. Yeah. Very, very cool. I want to come to your kitchen.
Come on over.
Yeah, let's make a portal through our pantries.
Hey, that'd be great.
It would be awesome. Let's all shop with Kelly here. Can you share with us some foods that naturally bring about a youthfulness about us, or help us not reverse the time, but help us be healthy as in longevity?
um, any of the foods that I just mentioned, again, if when you properly prepare them, it makes it easier on the body, first of all, to handle. You're not putting it into overload. Another really big thing that people don't really think about is, and we've been taught in society, is to eat a lot of meals throughout the day. You know, eat these small, and I did that for a lot of years because I had issues with hypoglycemia. So I was told to eat more frequent meals, you know, and to be higher in the protein, lower in the carbohydrates, which again is not necessarily a problem, but it was to more eat the frequent meals. Well, what happens is that you put your digestive system into overdrive and it's always working. Mm-hmm. So instead of it giving itself a break, you know, if you've heard the fast overnight, which means you're not eating, you're not getting up in the middle of the night and eating, you're giving your body a break. Well, there's a reason for that. The more that we can put soothing foods in, like the bone broth, the fermented vegetables, all those things to help digest, it creates other avenues for your body to be younger, to be healthier, to have more vitality, if you will. So it's really kind of simple. We tend to want to make things really hard, you know, but really the simple is put in the good, healthy foods. One of the benefits of bone broth also, outside of the other, you know, healing benefit, is that it's full of collagen and gelatin. Those things are great for hair, nails, skin, you know, so you get the nice healthy glow. So those are all things that we aspire to have, but those come naturally when you nourish the inside, they naturally come out.
Mm-hmm. Like on you. We can see that. It's beautiful. Awesome. Will you share with us, you talk about life is short and longevity is a treasure.
Life is short, you know, especially when you think about all the things that we stress about, we worry about, we have to put on our plates because of things that we have to do. When we start focusing on not focusing on the health and the healing, if you will, and we relax into it. And this is kind of what I was talking about at the beginning about not getting into the overwhelm, because that's easy to do too. All of a sudden it's very easy to go, oh my gosh, I don't know this, and I don't know this, and I don't know how to do this, and I need to change this, and you know, and we get this whole big long list, and then all of a sudden we're like exhausted, and we're like, I don't know where to start, you know. Right. And I get people tell me that a lot, and then they just don't. They just kind of throw their hands up and say, I don't even know, I'm not going to do it. I can't worry about all this stuff today. Mm-hmm. So when you think about slowing down and going, okay, what's one thing that I really want to know how to do, or what's one thing I really want to tackle with making something better with me, whether it's, you know, I want to lose 10 pounds or I really just want to be healthy this year. What does that look like for me? What's that one thing that you want to tackle first? And let's focus on that, and don't worry about the other stuff. Let it go for now. You know, right. When you do that, things do become, you start to treasure those moments that you go, wow, okay, I really did that. I learned how to make bone broth. Okay. So guys, I know you're going to go, okay, I'm going to do this. Yes. And then you're going to feel really great, you know, and then you're going to go, that's a treasure for me, because you know, look at all the things that I can implement it in. I'm nourishing my body. I'm making me feel better. I'm helping my family, you know, so you now feel really great. And to me, those are little treasures. They're victories, they're goals that we've hit and we've accomplished, and we can feel really good about doing so. And then, you know, then look at the next thing that's on the list and we'll go tackle that. And then we can have another, you know, little hidden treasure.
Right. You're all about healthy eating. And I can just imagine, and this is only my imagination, where you live, what it looks like. And I see a huge plant behind you. Yes. And it doesn't necessarily look like from this angle. From my point of view, it might look different when we edit this, but it looks like a squash plant. Do you have indoor vegetables?
No, I don't. Well, actually, I can't say I don't have vegetables, but I have, well, I do. I have some celery that I'm sprouting right now. Oh, cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really cool. Actually, all you do is and you cut off the end of the celery and you stick it into some water and it will sprout, and then you can put it in dirt and you can grow it.
Wow, cool. Very cool.
But, yeah, the plant behind me is it's a house plant.
Oh, okay.
But I have indoor herbs that I try to keep, you know, watered frequently, and I pluck off of those and use those quite frequently too. So, yeah.
Those can be tricky. I've done herbs a lot when my family was growing, and if you don't take care of your herbs, they dry out.
Yes, they do.
Very
Quickly.
Very quickly. Exactly. Well, it's totally awesome. So you're very, very passionate about life. I can see that. Let's talk about being passionate about health. I mean, you already have so much, but
yeah, I think it's a lot of things that we take for granted. And it's very easily to take for granted because we, you know, when we're young, we think, yeah, we feel good. We've got the world by the horns, and we just live. And just kind of like you were talking about, you know, it's like you had this thought, and it's like, okay, well, if I do this, and, you know, you're not really thinking necessarily, but maybe in some respects we are, because we want to change something. But being passionate about health has everything to do with really wanting it, first of all, because when you really want something, it becomes very important to you. And when it becomes very important to you, you become very passionate about it. So it's kind of this whole little roadmap. One thing leads to another. And then the more that you're passionate about something, the more you tell everybody. And you want to help everybody else, you know, get to that, as I'm sure you can completely understand. So I don't know. Passion, yes. When I start talking, I get very passionate about it because it is, you know, I want good health for everybody. And I think that there's a lot of people who don't really even remember what good health feels like or what good health looks like. And that's really my goal, is to help people at least feel better about themselves, have maybe more energy than they've ever had. Or get better sleep than they've ever had. And all these things come. I mean, those are little things, but they're huge things when you don't have them, you know? So that's really where I'm at, is like, okay, when you can get to the point where you start seeing little victories and start seeing those little treasures, and you start thinking about, okay, what does this feel like for me? And how did I get here? And how do I get over here? And you start it becomes more important, and you become more passionate about what you're doing and about the journey, because it is a journey. It's not like we jump on and and everything's fixed here shortly. And I would like to say, but you're going to feel better, and there's going to be, you know, things to celebrate. It's just, it does have to be, people have to get on board and know that it is a journey.
It's an absolute lifestyle change too. I've discovered that because, I went through a change about 6.5 years ago, where I totally changed my life, and I had lost like 140 pounds in 7 months, no surgery, all heart-mind connection, working out twice a day, changing what I ate. And, you know, throughout different relationships, I did gain a little bit here and there, but I hopped back on it again just recently, in the last couple months. And it's so exciting to dedicate this time to myself and understand, okay, Mia, this time, like last time you thought it was forever, but this time it truly is forever, because when we stop what we're doing, that we love ourselves, then we totally get off the track, off our journey, and then we start to feel achy again. So it is a lifestyle change.
Absolutely. And it has to be a one that people want. You know, like you said, you were passionate about it. You dove into it because it was important to you. And you saw benefits and you saw results, which egged you on to keep going. You know, it spurred you on. It motivated you to keep going. But more importantly, you wanted it from a deep, important internal place.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
It wasn't just all about the external.
Yeah, I wanted to live and to do the things you said, to feel good. And God, my life totally changed when I started eating differently and taking care of myself. I mean, I became a friggin' rock star, man. You know, it's like, woo!
Absolutely. Woo!
Yeah, exactly. I have a question about, which is kind of common in today, because wheat is not produced the same way it was 100 years ago or 70 years ago. What can people eat if they have, say, celiac disease or something where they have an intolerance to wheat products? Because it's everywhere and it's really processed.
Yeah, it is. And we're seeing more and more people being diagnosed with celiacs or something similar. And it's all lifestyle. I mean, it truly comes down to all of the processed foods that we have been ingesting for so long. And some people's bodies are just more susceptible, if you will. Maybe their immune system is weaker, so it's going to allow more things to unfortunately transpire. So yes, you need to eliminate. I'm not a big proponent of eliminating foods forever, if you will, because I really feel that people can go through a process of, much like dietary when you have allergies, typically they will start trying to figure out what you're allergic to, and we eliminate those foods, but they don't do it necessarily we're going to eliminate them forever. The concept really is to heal, allow your body to heal through those foods and slowly start integrating things back in. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a one size fits all for every person, because everybody's going to have slightly different needs and slightly different tolerances. So yes, getting away from our modern time gluten issues, or wheat issues are a problem for most people. I use a sprouted spelt flour. Spelt is an ancient grain. Einkorn is a really ancient grain. Both of those things go back to biblical times. And so those are pre all of the, stuff that has been done today to hybridize to make it, a bigger crop, a more crop, which is part of the problem for most people today. Kind of getting a little techie here, but if you look at old corn or old wheat, like einkorn and spelt, the wheat grains were much smaller.
Right.
Today they're a lot bigger because, again, it's all about the yield and the production. So this is what has also given people a lot of problems. Also, our dietary today is a lot of things have wheat in them, but then they've enriched it. It's gotten very processed.
Yes.
So we overdo. As a culture, we tend to overdo, we overeat, we eat too much fast food, all of those type things. And that really has created a lot of issue. It kind of goes back to the inflammation issue, what I talked about at the beginning. Now our bodies become very inflamed. We end up with this, what's called leaky gut. So that's allowing food that's going in to actually leak out into your bloodstream, which then creates more inflammation. It's just kind of a vicious cycle. So even somebody that has celiacs typically has other issues going on as well. It's just now gotten to that point. There were a lot of red flags, if you will, going along, but our society is, especially if you're getting older, well, we're just getting older. I should have aches and pains, and I shouldn't have as much energy as I had when I was 20, and et cetera, et cetera. But those are myths. You really should have all that energy.
Okay.
And the aches and pains, right? The aches and pains aren't necessarily things that we have to say we have to have either,
Right. And who wants them, really?
Right. Exactly.
We always want to feel great.
Yeah.
And young and all that kind of stuff. So
absolutely.
Awesome. Do you grow your own wheat?
I don't at this point, although I'm trying to find somebody, and I think that's definitely a path that I'm going to go down. I've been told here recently of a couple people who might be interested, or actually are, or might be interested in growing it for me. So that would be so awesome. Right now, I was buying it already sprouted and already grained or already milled. I actually now have the spelt berries, and so I'm going to do that process. So actually sprouting them and then grinding them. And yes.
Very cool. That's very, very cool. Awesome. Thank you. I love that. Would you like to share with us your free gift?
Absolutely. I've been working on a book that's really kind of called The Art of Healing. And that really is where the mind, body, and the spirit collide. Part of what I see is that there's a toolbox, and I talk about this a lot too, about, there's specific things that we need in our little arsenal of tool and our, arsenal, our toolbox. And those things are needed to heal. And some of the things we talked about today, talking about specific foods. So part of this ebook is really kind of breaking down each of those specific foods. What are the benefits? Why do we want to put them in? Because somebody can say, oh, yeah, you should drink this, but they're not really telling you all the things of why you should do something. So I've really started doing all of that. So really where I'm at today is I would love to give anybody that's interested in the first chapter to the book, as I'm not finished with it yet, but it will be out sometime soon. So we're going to I'll give you the first chapter to the book, and I hope that inspires you to go, wow, I could do this, and here's why I want to do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to read the rest of the book when Kellie sends us the information. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's very cool. Awesome. That's wonderful. There's a few other thoughts that I have about nutrition that I'd like to just bring up. Thank you about the wheat. Also, it's interesting when we do our shopping and say we pull off the shelf, and I'm sure you make your own from scratch. I just realized that. But when we pull off the pasta, some of it's made with flour, egg, and water or whatever, and then and salt, and some of it's made with, hydrogenized this and that and all that kind of stuff. So are there other alternatives? Like, I guess there's a squash, like a spaghetti squash people could use if they're looking for an alternative to squash. Are there ideas of things that you can just briefly share, alternatives to the main things that some people are pulling away from to get their health better right now before they can implement it back in, how you said?
Yeah, the big thing is to eliminate as much of the white flour. Think of white foods as like foods we really don't want to consume a lot of. So it's white flours, your sugars, those type of foods, because it leads to, yes, a lot of other health issues. And sugar is a big one too for, I'm sure you've heard where they've talked about it being relative to cocaine, the addiction part of it being that, because once you start eating it, it triggers a chemical in your brain that says, ooh, give me some more of that. And then you end up on this, what I call the sugar monster, who takes over and you're putting in sugar all the time. So Staying away from the white things. Processed foods, I'm not a fan of, and that is the grocery store shopping in essence, because anytime you go down the inside aisles of the grocery stores where you're buying all your processed foods. So really shopping around the perimeter of the store, which is where all your fresh things, your produce, your meat, your dairy, those are all around the perimeter of the store. That's the better place to shop. As soon as you start heading down the aisles, you're into processed foods, which is where you get into all the foods that, cause issues for people. Big one right now is gluten. Gluten-free everything. I mean, things are labeled gluten-free that, good grief, it's licorice. It wouldn't
really?
Right. But, hey, if we say it.
Yeah. Oh, I can eat that.
Yeah, exactly. It's gluten-free. Well, okay, yeah, but it's loaded with a lot of sugars and artificial dyes.
Yeah.
So, just the more that you can stay out of your inside aisles, the better your health is going to be. I'm also a big proponent of buying local, hooking up with local producers of your meat. You can buy pastured meat, grass-fed meat, your eggs, your dairy, all of those main things that you eat, all of those things you can prepare. You can buy, fresh cheeses. So all of these things, you don't necessarily have to have the pasta, if you will. Other alternatives to pasta are like what you said, the spaghetti squash is an excellent one. Polenta, I love, and I've just actually got introduced to a local grower of the corn that came from Italy, and they've sun-dried it. It's been locally ground. And so, you can make that into a great alternative to a pasta by putting some herbs in it and putting some fresh marinara on the top, and it's like heaven, So yeah. There are all kinds of other alternatives like that. I mean, it's kind of thinking outside the box a little bit, if you will, instead of going the traditional route that we tend to always think we have to have the boxed pasta.
Yeah. Or everybody, write Kellie and use her knowledge and hire her. And I haven't said this about anybody before, hire them, but let's hire Kellie, because I know that I'm totally interested in all this. It's fascinating, because it really does help us, not just with ourselves, but with our family, teach them to be healthy. You and I got really stuck in the age of, and you went one way and I went the other, we got stuck in the age of the processed foods. And now that I look at processed foods over the last 70 years, it really makes me ill. It's like, how did they not know that it would mess us up? How did they not know this? So.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially when you dig into, because it's funny, I'm getting ready to start teaching a bunch of classes, and one of them was kind of doing the whole foundational part of it,
Mm-hmm.
And so if you start looking back 80 years, 100 years at the changes that have transpired, and now what has happened with our health as a result of all of these things, but it's all about big dollars. When you get all these big companies in there, it becomes big dollars for them. So they're not in the healing business,
Right. They're in the money business. Yeah,
Yes.
Exactly. And we find that around the world.
Yes.
Very much today in every aspect. Okay. Enough of that. What would you like to leave us with? Because we're through, if you can believe that. But we'd like to hear one more amazing thought from you.
Yeah. My big takeaway is for everybody to pick something or some place to start. Decide that health is number one. It's important to you, because in this life is short. We really only get one big go round. We were given this amazing temple. We need to take care of it. It is our God-given right to do that. And to honor that is to pick one thing and go, I can master this. I can do this. It's important to me, because, as you mentioned, it's important for our families. When you can lay that foundation for your children or even grandchildren of what good health looks like. I just had a conversation earlier today about that, with my granddaughter. She said, well, health is important to you and to mommy, but it's not, I don't really care about it. And I said, but you really should. And we just kind of, from a very, she's 8 years old. So from a perspective of just keeping it very simple, but let's make it fun, So if we can pick one thing, just start there. Mm-hmm. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't think about all the things that I know I need to dive into and dig into, and things aren't perfect. Just start simple and keep it simple, and always keep it simple. Don't get overwhelmed and overloaded.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's really good advice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kellie. It was a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. Thanks.
It was. And thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you in another segment. Bye.